The Affordable Care Act is a massive piece of legislation that is taking more than 10 years to implement. Its goal was initially simple, and that was simply to reduce the cost of health care and improve our health as a nation. Is it going to do that? Well, absolutely not. But as Americans, do we have to comply with it? You betcha. If you're an employer figuring out these rules and determining if the rules apply to your company, it can be overwhelming. I hope this series of short presentations from the Cornerstone Group will help you clarify the ACA requirements for you and your staff. Imagine a game like Scrabble or Monopoly, but with hundreds of millions of players. And then imagine the rules require some of the players to stay in the game all the time, others to leave, others have to leave the game right away, and still others play for just a little while and maybe come back later. Figuring out your next move and whether you're even in the game at all certainly could be a challenge. But that's the task employers are facing right now with the Affordable Care Act. Let's begin by taking a quick look at the mandate. Now, this is where most of the attention has been focused. Most of the companies in the United States are going to pass the mandate with flying colors, but let's break down some of the basics. The mandate begins by looking at which businesses are obligated to pay. The ACA mandate says that employers must offer medical coverage that's affordable and provides a minimum value. Those who do not will need to pay a penalty, but the mandate doesn't cover every employer. If your company has fewer than 50 employees, the employer mandate doesn't apply to your company. It doesn't apply to your business. If you have 50 to 99 employees, the mandate doesn't apply this year, but in 2016 you must offer health coverage to your employees that are full-time. If your business has 100 or more full-time employees, then in 2015 you've got to comply with this employer mandate and offer coverage to 70% of your full-time employees. Next year, you must do the same, but offer it to 95% of your full-time employees. All these rules may seem simple enough. How does the Affordable Care Act define a full-time employee? Well, that's somewhat of a complicated calculation, but I'll try to simplify it here and explain in further presentations on our site. The employer mandate, which takes effect in 2015, January 1st, applies to companies with 100 or more employees. Now, employers must count all full-time employees and part-time employees that are what are called full-time equivalent employees to determine if they have 100 or more employees. Certain seasonal workers are not counted in determining if you have 100 or more workers. And the president has now defined full-time employment as working 30 hours or more per week. And if you have an employee that's working 30 or more hours per week, then you're going to have to offer them coverage. Otherwise, penalties are going to be assessed. Here are the two basic penalties. The first is what we call penalty A, no coverage. And if an employer fails to provide its full-time employees with the opportunity to enroll in medical coverage that provides a minimum value, and one or more of those full-time employees enrolls in coverage on the federally subsidized exchange, then the employer will pay a penalty of $2,000 for each of its full-time employees in the workforce. Whether or not they're on the exchange or not, they're going to get tagged for $2,000 per employee if only one of their employees goes to the exchange and gets a subsidy. Penalty B is what we call an unaffordable plan, and that's when the employer offers its full-time employees the opportunity to enroll in the minimum essential plan, a plan that offers a minimum essential benefits. And then if one of those employees enrolls in coverage under the exchange and gets a subsidy, then the employer's contribution exceeds 9.5% of their W-2 income, then they're going to be tagged with a penalty. And this penalty is a little bit different. It's $3,000 for each employee who receives a tax credit. Let's take a quick look at an example of not offering coverage. Let's say you've determined that you've got 100 employees. What's the penalty for not paying? Well, in 2015, if you have one full-time employee that goes and receives a tax credit from the marketplace, as we said before, you're going to need to pay $2,000 times the number of full-time employees, subtracting out 80. Where they got 80 from is a mystery, but that's the way the formula works right now. In 2015, for example, if you have 200 employees and you do not offer coverage, your penalty would be 200 minus 80, which gives you 120. Multiply 120 times $2,000. That gives you $240,000 in total. That's the penalty that you will pay for not offering coverage. In 2016, your business would owe $2,000 times the number of full-time employees after subtracting out 30 employees. So your penalty would soar all the way up to $340,000. And this is an onerous penalty, meaning it's not deductible. So you really, from a cash flow standpoint, have to take into account the cash flow of an after-tax penalty when comparing your cost of premiums against the cost of a penalty.
Do you have questions? Do you need more information? Please contact Frank Meyer at the Cornerstone Group at 248-641-2731. That's 248-641-2731. Thank you.